Great seeing you all and having a full committee with so many enthusiastic folks. First item of the agenda is the call to order, which I have done, and it's now I need to ask the secretary for a roll call.
1 second.
Want a different finger?
There we go.
There we go.
Wow.
White screen. I don't know how I feel about that. That's not my good side.
So roll call. Board member Liptak? Here. Board member Neely?
Here?
Board member Quant?
Here.
Board member Sanders?
Here?
Board member C?
Here?
Vice Chair
Dikey,
Dykey?
yeah.
Chair Rabinowitz?
Rabinovich, yes,
Let the record reflect that all board members are present.
thank you. Since we haven't convened in quite a while and we have some new members, I'd like to just go briefly around, introduce ourselves, including the staff. So, Art, would you like to start? We'll just go around in a circle here.
Well, I'm Art. I'm an environmental consultant. I've been on this committee for, I don't know, quite a few years now, and happy to be here.
I'm Vic Liptak. I've been in architectural education and academic affairs for a very long time, and I'm on the design review board, and so I am here by virtue of that and really happy to be here.
I should have mentioned I'm an at-large.
Right.
Kevin C., at large as well. I teach at the junior college chemistry and wine chemistry. If anybody wants to learn to make wine, we're the place. And I live in the Southwest. In fact, I live about a third of a mile from item 2 on our agenda, so I probably need to recuse myself at that point.
You actually don't. I just got word.
Oh, really? Oh, good. All right. Never mind.
I am Susie Murray. I'm a planner here for the city of Santa Rosa and current development. Excuse me. And if you ever need anybody to sample that wine, you just let me know. And I'll be presenting the first item this morning, but I'll wait to introduce that until we make our way around. I've been with the city since 2006. So.
I'm Lonnie. I'm the recording secretary here, as well as for the design review board, planning commission, and a lot of other boards. I'm the admin secretary in planning.
And good morning. I think I know most everyone. My name is Amy Lyle. So I manage our long-range planning team. So at the city, we have 2 teams, the current planning team and the advanced planning team, but I call it the long-range.
County talking.
Well, sometimes people don't know what advanced planning really means. So yeah. But yeah, so my team works on all the policy for the city, and the current team works on all the projects that come through. And yeah, happy to be here. And I'm your liaison. I'm your staff liaison to the Waterways Committee.
I'm Terrence Sanders. I am brand new to the Planning Commission and even newer to this committee. And really excited about being here. Thank you.
Carol Quant, about 8+ years on the Park and Rec Board, and 5 years, 6 years maybe, as the Park and Rec Board's representative to this board, and also possibly 2 active on the Prince Memorial Greenway.
My name is Mark Neely. I'm an at-large member, like Art, been here for a number of years now, and retired geologist, and I'm glad we have some new members on the board. It's very exciting.
And you were involved in the Water Quality Control Board, as
That's
I
right,
recall.
Water Quality Control Board for 30+ years.
I didn't know that.
I didn't know that either.
Steve Rabinowitz. I've been on this committee, I think since its inception. I started being involved in the community with the Prince Memorial Greenway and the Committee for Restoring Santa Rosa Creek, which led to the master plan for Santa Rosa Creek, which led to the master plan for city waterways. And so I'm pleased to be here. Wow, it's just feel good having you all here. It's a great group. Okay.
Can we do the staff behind you?
Oh, yeah, of course. Thank you. Please.
Hi, I'm Sabi. I'm a Stormwater Creeks intern. Hi, I'm Steve Brady, and I'm a senior environmental specialist in our water department. Stormwater and Creeks team, and we're routinely here to help answer questions on creeks, and usually we'll have items from time to time, and we'll give a brief update on pieces that are happening.
And you have something to do with creek restoration too.
Oh, yeah, creek restoration, planning, all kinds of stuff. Creeks and other random environmental issues that come into the city sometimes that they don't know where to send.
Creek's healthy.
Kyle Swanberg, environmental specialist with Steve and Claire on the Stormwater and Creeks team with the city. And I also help coordinate the Creek Stewardship Program.
Good morning, I'm Claire Myers. I manage the Stormwater and Creeks team. So that includes all the work that Steve and Kyle and others are doing on creek restoration and creek stewardship. And then our team also manages our municipal separate storm sewer system.
MS4.
MS4.
Why don't we keep going over here? I know you're presenting.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Jen Briscoe. This is my second time presenting in front of you all, and I work with the current development team, and so I'm excited to be here in person with you all.
And you gentlemen here.
Item 2.
Item 2. Okay. Welcome.
Your mom named you item 2?
It's a long story.
What were you doing in track?
400 and 200.
Oh, man, so you gotta be fast. Ooh.
He was actually asking for your times. What were your times in?
Yeah, really.
It's 8 and 21, 2 and 20.
Ooh, that'd have to do hours for me.
You're nationally ranked, right? Like, yeah.
Wow.
Nationally ranked, and he's ridden his bike to work every single
Right.
day since he was how old? Or school?
Since 2020, actually.
Good on you.
Oh, good for you.
Wow.
Yeah.
Carol rode her bike in today.
Go Vikings.
Yeah.
Well, I have to read something here. I have my duties here. The city of Santa Rosa is committed to creating a safe and inclusive environment. We will not tolerate speech or actions that disrupt a public meeting or may be perceived as aggressive, demeaning, or harmful towards staff, an applicant team, or other meeting participants. Staff will be monitoring the meeting and ensuring that everyone is participating respectfully. If staff determines that a meeting participant is acting in a disruptive or disrespectful manner, they will first be muted and given a warning. If the behavior continues, it will then be removed. If necessary, we will also immediately end the meeting. If participants have additional questions or concerns, they should reach out directly to project planner or the applicant team. Okay, moving on now, it's time to ask for public comment on non-agenda items. We're now taking comments on 4 on non-agenda matters. It's a time when any person may address the subcommittee on matters not listed on the agenda, but which are within the subject matter jurisdiction of this committee.
If you're in person and you wish to make a comment, please raise your hand.
Agenda, that's correct. So you're going out.
We have only one person participating in Zoom. So if you're on Zoom and you want to make a comment, you can raise your hand by selecting the raise your hand icon. If you're calling in, please press *9. For the caller who just joined us, we're taking public comment on non-agenda items. All right, Chair Rabinowitz, there are no hands raised.
Okay. So the role of the Waterways Advisory Committee is to review development projects, both public and private, that are located adjacent to creeks and waterways for consistency with the goals, policies, and regulations of creekside development identified in the Santa Rosa General Plan Zoning Code Design Guidelines and the citywide creek master plan. While the committee does not take formal action on projects, it does provide decision-making.
Advisory.
I'm reading something. Advisory comments to the decision-making body. All development projects located adjacent to the creek or waterway are required to be reviewed by the Waterways Advisory Committee prior to proceeding through the entitlement process. Time for committee reports. I do not have one to give. Does any other member of the committee have any reports at the moment? Okay, we'll move on to the Planning and Economic Department.
Great, thank you so much.
We're not gonna do this.
Before we move on to department reports, we do have item 3.3 listed on the agenda as vice chair election. But because we haven't done our chair election yet. We're going to continue this item to the next meeting.
Yeah, that's one thing I was going to note is that we did get word that the mayor does not need to appoint a chair so that our committee can appoint a chair. So we'll do that at the next meeting. And as part of that, I know we've been hoping to have a field trip and we weren't able to do that in May. This month, we had a lot of items. So we thought in person in a room would probably be easier. So we're hoping in June that we can do the field trip. We do have to do the chair and vice chair election, but we're hoping we can do that in the field. So we'll have to figure out how to facilitate that well without a meeting space. But I think we can do that and still be able to get our tour accomplished that Steve and team will be leading. So beyond that, I don't have an department reports.
Okay, do we have a report from the water department?
Yes, we do.
All right.
So Chair and Ben and members of the committee, I wanted to give a quick update on our Lower Colgan Creek restoration project. So for some of the new members on the committee, this has been a long-standing project within the city for over 20 years. And we're planning to restore about 1.5 of Colgan Creek, and this is from Elsie Allen High School area upstream, like I said, 1.3 miles in length. So it's a complete channel reconstruction, enlargement of the channel, and a critical component of the project is the original channelized creek was only sized to carry the 25-year flood. So our project will expand it, in-stream habitat, carry the 100-year flood, and we have divided the project up into 3 different phases, and phases 1 and 2 are complete, which is great. And we have one more phase to go, but phase 2 has really been completed since the last time we had a meeting in person anyway. So that was completed in 2022 with all of the planting. That was about a 2,000 feet long stretch of the creek at the upstream end. And phase 1 was near Elsie Allen. So now we have phase 3 is the gap in between phases 1 and 2. And also with phase 3, this will include a future city park will be adjacent to it. It's actually not part of the creek project, but it'll all be connected. So that will be a great project there once we can get our creek work done, and then eventually that park. But again, phase 3 will be a complete channel reconstruction, realignment. And what had happened when the creek was channelized, the creek was realigned and it was actually lengthened, which is pretty uncommon for a channelization. Usually they're straightened and shortened, but in this case, I think it was moved to kind of be out of the way. So we're trying to actually shorten the creek a little bit and also add habitat there. And it'll also include a bridge, a paved trail. It'll be a great space for the community once it's all done. And then some big news on phase 3, because we are gearing up for construction of that probably in 2025. So we were able to get a grant from the Open Space District for acquisition of the last land that we needed for that. So it's up to $1.5 million, and we have actually already acquired the property, and now we're going to be working with Open Space to get reimbursed for that. Wow. And then we also applied to the Urban Streams Restoration Program from California Department of Water Resources, and they have funded the first 2 phases. And we were I guess I'd say somewhat surprised, but very glad that we're able to get.
Retroactively, you were funded?
No, this is for phase 3 for the future phase. So we were funded with $4.4 million towards construction. So usually grant awards are more in the neighborhood of $1 million, and we applied for all of the money that we needed for the project, and we got back the largest award in the state. I think the next largest one was $1 million, and only 2 projects were selected on the first round. And we got 4.4 million, and up in Truckee got like $1 million, so.
Congratulations.
Good job, yeah.
Congratulations.
So that really helped us, and now, construction it will happen in 2025. And we still have about $1.5 million out there that we're looking for other grants. And one that we're looking for is the California Wildlife Conservation Board. So that's under California Department of Fish and Wildlife. So we'll see if we can get some additional funding, but we also have a parcel assessment here in Santa Rosa that goes towards creek restoration. So we can use those funds, but we're trying to get some grant funds so then we can use our in-house funds for other projects going forward. So
Steve, excuse me, is there a grant writer or a team effort?
it's our team, so we
kudos to all
on
of
top of
you.
everything else.
That's
So,
Promotions or raises.
yeah.
He's
So,
working on that too.
and, I think it'd be great to get you all out there for a field tour. We can look at phase 2,
Yes.
look at the future phase 3. So,
That'd be great.
We'll be looking at that for June or soon
We'll do that.
thereafter. And with that, I think Kyle can give us an update on creek stewardship program. Yeah.
Can I ask a couple of questions of you before we move to that? So the 100-year storm, what were the past rainy season? Did we have a 100-year storm? That's the first question.
We actually did not.
Yeah.
So what was interesting, October 24th of 2022, right? Yeah. Getting confused. Or no, 21 is when the big one was. But we actually had over 7 inches of rain in 24 hours in Santa Rosa, which was very large. But what had happened at the time, everything was very dry. So if we were to get that over 7 inches of rain after everything was saturated, I think we would have had a lot more issues throughout the city. But we were kind of fortunate it came early in the year. But that was when our phase 2 project was constructed. We got out of the creek October 15th, and then October 24th, we got hit with a very large event. But really, we had a few minor issues within the project, but everything worked out okay.
Great. And then the park, that's to the northwest of phase 1, right? It's in that new development area, right?
Well, it'll actually be adjacent to the future phase 3. So, it'll basically feel like the creek is part of the park.
Oh, so it's not the other park that's proposed in that. So it's a different one. Okay. All right, great.
I think they're calling it a linear park.
All right, beautiful. Thank you.
Steve, how do Colgan Creek and Roseland Creek compare in flow? I know Colgan Creek is basically the next one south of Roseland Creek, right? Doesn't Colgan Creek does it come off of Taylor Mountain?
It does.
Okay, so the flow is probably a lot higher than Roseland Creek?
Yes, it is. And really, Roseland Creek now really begins at the tracks, at the heart tracks is really the beginning. That's the headwaters now. So I think historically it probably came a little bit further to the east.
Okay.
That's where it is, yeah.
Thanks.
Great. Hello, Chair Rabinowitz and committee members. I did print out just a quick annual summary from the 2022 year for our creek stewardship program, since we haven't met in a while. So if you wouldn't mind passing those around, there might be some extras. So it's a pleasure being here this morning, meeting you all. I've been with the city now just over a year. And it's been a real pleasure to be a part of this creek stewardship program and continue building and also just maintaining the great program that Alistair Blythe was helping along with our team after his retirement. So, we did see a dip in participation and both volunteers and hours that we were able to operate during the pandemic, but thankfully we have returned to those pre-pandemic participation volunteer hours. So it's been great to see while I'm here. In 2022, we partnered with numerous agencies and volunteer groups, volunteer individuals throughout the community to do 348 educational and stewardship activities throughout the city, including, 132 events and presentations, 70 creek restoration and monitoring days, and 146 volunteer cleanups. So it's been really great. Been very busy, but very great to be a part of all the great community effort there. So one of the highlights, and we haven't met since Creek Week, which was last September, but that was a really great event for us. We had over 250 people participate in week-long activities. We had 2 different underground tours that toured the underground culverts that go beneath our feet right now. We had a creek cleanup to kick off the week, which was great, and that lines up with the coastal cleanup day as well. Let's see, we did a nature walk along Streamside Drive, which is a restoration reach that we've been working on for a handful of years, which was very popular as well. And some tours out of the Laguna Treatment Plant. So we just had our first meeting for 2023 Creek Week this week. And we had, great success and a lot of interest in a lot of those events. We actually had over 190 people waitlisted for the underground tours that weren't able to make it. So we're gonna try and increase the number of tours that we're doing down there since it's obviously a hot ticket item. So. Earth Day, we also had an Earth Day cleanup along PNG the morning before the events there at Courthouse Square. We had about 50 people show up for that, so it was great. They were able to work along the creeks and then walk along the creek path up to join the festivities down at Courthouse Square. So that was another great event. So yeah, there's been a lot of great partnerships. We worked with Parks and Rec on an Arbor Day event to plant sedges and things along the creek on Pomo Creek at Northwest Community Park. In partnership while they planted trees and things like that. So lots of different events. Looking forward to continuing to expand the program in new ways in 2023. And hope to see some of you out there at some of our events in the future.
Would you like to have a booth at the Wednesday market?
We're working with Stormwater actually, and we're partnering on a booth.
Okay.
At Wednesday market.
Great.
Okay. Yeah, thank you.
What are the dates for Creek Week this year?
Great question. I believe it's September 16th to the 23rd.
Great. Thanks.
I was able to participate in the Arbor Day event out at Northwest, and after we planted our tree, going over to the creek and seeing Michael there and all the little plants, it's like, what are you doing here? We're actually working together. It's like, whoa, it was very cool to see the 2 departments doing the joint.
Yeah, they've been great to work with, so I look forward to continuing to expand that partnership moving forward.
What were those dates again? September
16th to the 23rd. And we'll be sending out, last year we did bill inserts and posters, and we'll have a decent amount of outreach. So that'll come in the next month or so. To see this dates.
Let us know how we can help too.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you.
Great job.
I just want to add, we did a staff cleanup during the week during lunchtime one day, and had 3 different spots throughout town depending on where city staff were working. Had a great turnout. We had a lot of fun too. Like staff had a great time. And so you all are always welcome to join us for any of those events.
Yeah, those quick cleanups are fun. Very wonderful community event. Carol is a regular. I show up sometimes, and it's really wonderful. Makes you feel good doing something good. Any other questions of our wonderful team we have here?
Great reports.
Yeah, wonderful. Okay, we're going to move on to our first scheduled item, which is the cannery at Railroad Square. And we're not taking any action on this item, but we're going to hear a report from Susie Murray, and then the applicant, if they are here.
Applicant is attending remotely. But before I introduce them, good morning, Chair Rabinowitz and members of the Waterways Advisory Committee. Before I introduce them, I wanted to give a little background of why we're here. Back in 2018, the Senate Bill Senate Bill 35 was introduced, and that was a bill that allowed a streamlining ministerial process for affordable housing projects. Concurrent with that, and seeing it, heading our way, City of Santa Rosa adopted our design. What are they called? Objective Design Standards, Zoning Code Chapter 2039. And that allowed us to say, okay, if you meet these standards, your project can take advantage of this process. So we had several developers come forward. 4 projects were approved through this ministerial streamlining process, all of them meeting not just the objective design standards, but really city design standards as a whole. We were limited in time. Part of that process, staff's review time for at least this project was 90 days. It changes depending on how many units are involved. So we had 90 days of review time to get through this project. And it's not just what it looks like when it's an entitlement project. It is a project that is really 90%, I think, or 80% construction plans. And that's in terms of the building, of the site design, and all of the streets and the plumbing and all of the infrastructure. So it was quite the task, but it was very fun, and we worked very closely. Steve was part of the review for this project, and as were several other staff members. It included people from parks, from water, from stormwater and creeks, from traffic, engineering, development services, building, fire, every planning. Everybody got involved in this. So we have a website for these by right housing projects, but other than that, there's very little public involvement. So after, of course, when the projects were improved, and now that some of them have started breaking ground, staff has started hearing from both members of our boards and committees, but also the public. And so we thought that the best way to address some of those was to have one of our applicant teams come forward and explain their project and let us know. And so, we didn't go before the design review board for concept. We didn't go to the cultural heritage board. We didn't come to the Waterways Advisory Committee. Nothing. This was all done at staff level. So let's see. These projects are located at various points. There's one down in the Roseland area. There's one at the old senior the senior center down on Bennett Valley. There's one out on the corner of Calistoga and Highway 12. And then there's the one that's about to be presented to you, the cannery at Railroad Square. And that is, of course, where those beautiful walls are being preserved as part of this project. But before I introduce them, I want to say that I just want to give a shout out to the team. This team was such a pleasure to work with through the entitlement review. And it got, it was pretty intense. We have to do this. In order to meet certain requirements, things had to be changed and what have you. They were always amazing to work with. And they have risen again when I asked them to do a presentation for 3 different boards, or 2 boards and a committee, to explain to everybody what's going on. So I really want to let them know that how grateful I am and introduce them. Michelle Gervais and Don Lusty will be doing the presentation, but I don't want to miss a shout out to Mimi Sullivan, who was the architect involved, and she was at the other 2 meetings and had a conflict today. So as soon as I figure out how to get my presentation up, Lonnie, help, I'll let them take it away, but I'm sure I know Michelle, she'll probably have an introduction to.
Well, thank you. It's a pleasure to be here. And first of all, I'm sorry I'm not there in person, but I'm with you in spirit. And I'm looking at Steve way down at the other end of the table. This is a project.
Michelle. I'm talking at the bottom. Okay.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay, thank you. That 25, it's been a quarter of a century that this project started. I wasn't involved in those very early days, but this grew out of a grassroots community-based downtown revitalization project that hosted a RUDAT, Regional Urban Design Assistance Team, became City Vision, and then Main Street, and so many. Eventually the Downtown Station Area Plan came from that and other things. And so there has been a tremendous amount of community engagement, including visits with the Waterways Advisory Committee and a couple decades ago, and different boards and commissions. But before we get into the project itself, and not to sound like a total love fest, but it does feel good. Your staff is awesome. So just want to and I'm sure Don is going to be nodding. You'll see his head nodding. This was a project that was in the entitlement queue for different phases of partial demolition and different entitlements and since 2005. And this last round, which was obviously very different, was really important for so many reasons. And your staff handled it beautifully. And they had the benefit of good tools that were created by all these public processes that have been going on for a while. And so your work as great volunteers and staff, just know it does come together. And so this is a project that I think might showcase some of how that works. Nothing's perfect, but this is pretty darn good. So the Cannery at Railroad Square, you probably know the two brick, called Plant 5, which has a blue band across the top, and then the Cannery. And there are two buildings that have been there since right after the earthquake of '06. And those two buildings abutted each other. So they created a wall between 3rd and essentially 5th Street, which doesn't go through to the creek, as you know, but it was one long building with a really long cannery. What's that I Love Lucy show with the chocolates? You know, it's like one of those conveyor belts. and so the fruit would go down through this line between the two buildings. And then over time it became other things. It was a leather goods shop in the Plant 5 building, and car storage, and JC set storage, and other things in the Cannery building, the brick walls to the south along 3rd Street. And there it sat for a really long time. And then on the heels of this look at downtown, somebody had, there was a collective vision, like, let's go through to the creek. This is about the time all the creek stuff was coming along. And two really decent men got their families together and invested in these projects. In '08, I think they closed, or sorry, '08, wrong century, '98, and then '99. And then eventually went about trying to figure out how to, they're people that did affordable housing, and how do you create affordable housing in these neat old shells? And that'll be so important for this downtown. Well, very long story, kind of short. There was some recognition, thanks to the Regional Water Quality Control Board, and Joan Fleck is a name that I think you might recognize, some of you. She was very helpful, very clear in saying, oh, you got some problems and here's what it's going to take to solve them. And ultimately, those buildings had to be basically scraped out so that the historic wall was remaining. That was the contributor to the historic district. But they could get to tanks. There were certain tanks underneath the buildings that were not showing up on sandboard maps and other things. So basically there's a lot that had to be cleaned up along the site to benefit the creek. And so that did happen. Those were approved for demolition in 2005. They were demolished in 2006. And in the process of that, while those two buildings had abutted, the vision to connect to the creek required that about 40 feet be pulled back from between the buildings and be essentially dedicated to a public right of way, which John Stewart, being really the lead visionary, he led off with that idea. And it's still owned by these folks, but it's always been envisioned as a connection to 4th Street, an extension of 4th Street connecting to the creek. So with that kind of as a foundational idea in the design, then the project was developed in concept, and we'll review now what it is. It has had different variations on the theme, lots and hundreds of variations on the theme, but it's always been housing and different levels of affordability. And so that's kind of a brief history. I'll just mention the water tower too. That's a feature that many love, as do we. It is an historic structure. We consider it an historic structure. It's listed in the report. And it is anticipated to be restored and resurrected in proximity to where it was historically, which is what is basically along the 4th Street axis, maybe slightly to the north. We'll wait and see. It ties to what's known as the Plant 5 site, which is the 60 West 6th Street is the address, and it's the one in the middle directly next to the Playhouse. And so that will be we'll see that the community, I think, has some ideas of where that should go, what should be on it and so forth. And we're amenable to all that. But that's something to look forward to. It's not part of this first building phase. And so that's a bit of history, unless I want to introduce Don Lusty. Don Lusty is magical. He somehow found money and a wellspring of patience to keep looking for funding and get this project done. He's the project lead with the John Stewart Company, and without him, there would be no project. So, and I should just mention for those, Steve in particular, you might appreciate this, just a little heart-rending account. John Stewart, who was just an amazing man, he passed on about 2 weeks after this was entitled. So we're so grateful that he got to see that. So now it's under construction, and our architect is at a construction meeting right now. So we think that's a good sign. And she sent her regrets for not being with us. But let's move through the project itself, and then we'll take questions. So the Kennewick Railroad Square. And Dawn, why don't I let you talk from here? I think Don's trying to get his system, the noise sound quality as well. So I'll go through this list real fast. This is the project team.
I think if Don's calling in, we just went over to let him in.
Oh, good. Okay, great.
And Don, go ahead and try to call.
I think.
Is he there?
Good morning. Can you hear me?
He can.
Okay,
Yes.
great. Good morning, Chair, members of the committee, and hello to Susie, our favorite city planner. Really a pleasure to be here this morning, and I'm just going to talk briefly about the project and give you a little background about the project, its design, and who we'll be serving in this project. This slide shows the development team, which we're John Stewart Company is the developer, Seiden Sullivan are the architects. Carlisle Macy is our longtime civil engineer, as well as the architects. Some of these firms, like Michelle, have been working on this project for, 15 to 20 years. I'm sort of new to this project. I've been on it 5 years. So this is a really exciting moment for us. And I don't know if anyone's been by the site, but there's a lot going on. It's really exciting to see. Our landscape architect is PJ. Midstate is our construction. They're located in Petaluma, and they've been terrific and real supporters. We have services provided by a firm that we've used a lot called Life Steps, and they, in particular, will be working with 33 units set aside for formerly homeless families who will be living at the property. And then we have local funding from the Santa Rosa Housing Authority and also from the State Department of Housing and Community Development, which includes a $57 million forgivable loan for this project. Right. Here's the timeline. We received our entitlements in August of 2020, as Susie mentioned. We closed our construction financing on Halloween Day of last year, and construction is expected to go through early 2025, and then full occupancy later that year. Okay. This just gives a sort of basic snapshot of the property and who will be serving. It's 100% affordable. There are 129 units, one staff unit, and as I mentioned, 25% of the units are set aside for families who are formerly homeless, and we've received project-based Section 8 vouchers from the Housing Authority for those folks. They'll pay 30% of their income, and the balance of the rent will be paid through the Section 8 voucher program. You can see the monthly rents on $993 to $2,063. Depends on the unit size, and there's a fairly complex set of funding requirements that restrict incomes in various units to various limits referred to as AMIs, area median income, and in this property, those incomes are 30% to 80% of area median income. there are 52 parking spaces. We have bike spaces. And in addition to a community room, we have a robust adjoining outdoor space, computer lab, and we'll show you a layout of the outdoor space to the back. And then importantly, we're providing a pedestrian corridor to the creek from the new road, which is yet to be named, that we're installing to the east of our property between our site and the Cornerstone site adjacent to the railroad station. Slide, please. And I wish our architect were here because she could be much more eloquent about the design, but this essentially shows the project at 6 stories. There's a lot of articulation. This shows the loading dock and the wall. The wall will have uplights on it. I think it's going to be really dramatic at night and beautiful. As Susie mentioned, the design was dictated by a very strict set of design guidelines that were adopted by the city for this entitlement process, 35 that she described. So this is looking northeast from the corner of 3rd Street and the new road that we're installing. Next slide. And this is looking, let me get my directions, west from downtown along 4th Street corridor. So that's looking from downtown across the railroad through the Cornerstone site to our property. The water tower is shown here, but it's not going to be installed in this space. It's going to be installed when we develop Plant 5. Right, next slide. And I don't know how big this is, but this is the landscape plan. And at the top of the slide is the new road that we're putting in. 3rd Street is to the right. And then to the left, we have the new pedestrian pathway and also the main lobby entrance to the building. And so Susie's showing you where the pedestrian pathway is. And then to the right of that is the rear yard for the residents of the property. We have a dog run. We have a turf area. And then to the right of that, we have some picnic tables. And then to the right of that, we have a wooded deck with a trellis. And then to the right of that trellis, so you have that dark green area, that's a bioswale to hold water on site, and and to allow it to percolate. It's landscape, but it's not really meant to be used. It's really the purpose I mentioned. And then to the north, that little pink square is a tot lot adjacent to a laundry room. So there'll be a lot of eyes on the creek and the pathway along the creek from the building. You can't see it very well here, but there are 2 podium courtyards that are set up approximately 15 feet from the landscape rear yard and approximately 20 feet up from the creek. So in addition to folks, activating this backyard, the podium courtyards will be used, and then there are units that face to the back, and then there are all the units all the way up the building. And I will say the building is stepped back, and that was a conscious design decision with regard to the creek. So from the creek, the building is stepped back and it's not monolithic. And then there are lights along both the pathway and some along the rear fence. They're pole lights. They're decorative. They're really nice. They're designed to not produce light pollution, so they're pretty strict rules about how lights work in outdoor spaces. But I think there'll definitely be more eyes on the creek, and there'll be lights where there are none now. So I think it's going to be for folks walking on the pathway. I think it'll be a nicer experience certainly than it is right now. Next slide. And these are just elevations. I don't know. This is south elevation looking north towards the playhouse. That shows the the restoration of the canopy on 3rd Street. Next slide. And this is the east elevation. So this is the long brick wall that will that runs along the new road that we're installing. Next slide. And then this is the north. I'm sorry, I'm trying to get my orientation here. This is looking south from the Plant 5 site. Then next slide. And this is the west elevation, which is the elevation from the creek. And it looks, this elevation doesn't really describe very well how the building is set back, because this looks much more monolithic than it really is.
Maybe, Dawn, I could just interject, sorry.
Yeah, please.
We don't have to put in place, but just so you know, folks, there are basically 3 fingers of building. So there's a spine of units. The face that is on the smart site overlooking the rail site is one long line of building. And then from that are 3 corridors. So the south and then the center and on the north. And it's a double loaded corridor. I mean, there's units on both sides of that. And then between those 3 extensions of building are as open space, and there's a podium. So on the top of the 2nd floor, is there are 2 podiums, one north and one south, and they have different purposes, different intended uses. One's more chill and one's more formal, and they're so it's a, you know, it will have a much you just look at all these eyes, but it will not be such a monolithic looking structure as this image would suggest.
It's those big, I don't know if you can point to them, Susie, but those 2 big sort of cutouts in the middle are set back. Yes, keep going up. Yeah, right there. That's the podium, and that's set back, and same here. Those are the podiums that Michelle was discussing. Okay, next slide. And we talked about this. The brick wall is being restored, and I will say it's going to be a lovely feature, but it's a $5 million feature, which did not help us keep this project. The original budget, I mean, all in this project is the $95 million project, and there's nothing affordable about affordable housing. People often play low income or the residents with the construction costs, and projects end up being very expensive for a whole bunch of reasons. So we're keeping the landscaping along the brick wall to a minimum. We have some planters on the loading dock with some sort of low grassy vegetation, and then on the backside towards the creek, we're planting. Are they almond trees? No, they're not. Olive trees, right? Yeah, olive trees to sort of harken back to the cannery's original use. Then, as I mentioned, the water tower is going to be installed as part of the Plant 5 development. And this, Mimi's better at this than I am, but you've seen the elevations for the 4 sides, and they're really, the design guidelines are pretty strict about, modulation and articulation and materials, and so it's going to be a really rich facade, I think. As I mentioned, the building steps back from the creek, and the 3 wings that sort of point out. We went over the backyard amenities and the exterior metal stairs, which I think you can see in one of the elevations, which are really cool. Okay, I think you have one more maybe for the. So as I mentioned, there are going to be a lot of eyes on the creek and the waterway. I think we'll be good in making a safer place for folks. We're installing the approximately 40-foot wide pedestrian pathway, and then the landscaping we really try to keep in mind the drought conditions under which we're all living mostly living until this fall and winter, this past one. But so water efficient, drought tolerant plants, and as you slope down to the creek from our building, there's a bioswale, which, as I mentioned, is landscape, but it's not really meant to be occupied. I think you can see the rest of those. I think that's all I've got, but we're happy to answer questions. Thankfully, Michelle's here. She's much more articulate than I am. So feel free to ask either one of us questions. Happy to be here. Excited about the project.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much. So if there are questions, this would be the time. I might add, however, we're really, as a committee, our jurisdiction really is the interface between development and creek. So we could talk about Senate Bill 35. We could talk about affordable housing development. We could talk about lots of things today. And I would ask that we limit our questions to the aspects I just mentioned. But please go right ahead. Any questions regarding the development and the creek?
I was wondering if technology could get this to do a full screen up there so that we could see it. It was pretty low with its borders and everything. And I wanted to specifically get some more information on the pedestrian access to the creek and how people would get from their particular units to the creek.
There are a couple ways. The main way, can you point to where, go back to that slide and point, do you see the brown area in the top left? That's the main lobby entrance.
I don't know what I'd do without her. The answer would be no.
This is why we need architects. They know how to do this stuff. Really.
Thank you.
Okay, great. So, yeah, I mean, can folks see that?
Yeah.
The brown sort of triangular area to the upper left, that's the main entrance into the building. And so folks could come out that door, and then there's a gate that will be open just to the left of that entrance. Do you see that dark line? It's on, can I read the lines here? I can't see them. It says sliding gate at a public pathway. It's sort of up on the left. That's the entrance that will be open to the public. So residents can come out that way to the promenade. Yeah, right there. Sort of. That's to the left is the main gate to the pedestrian pathway, and then if they're in the backyard, there's a exit only gate that comes out the backyard, and they could come into the pedestrian pathway from the south, from the from actually, right. I'm sorry, my phone's talking. Shut up, Siri. Yes, there. That's the entrance to the west towards the creek, and folks could. If they're in the backyard, which is fenced, they could come out the backyard to the pathway and then go back up to the pedestrian pathway north and go up the pathway to the new road we've created. I'm not sure that I described that very well. I'm sorry I don't have a pointer. But there are a number of ways they can get to the pathway.
I can see your pointer a lot of times.
So this is the primary entrance, right? And there's a gate over here that they can get into. It's hard because I don't have an arrow here. So it's in the general area. And then there's a secondary access point for people that are in the backyard. The backyard is the area that's behind the building, in between the building and the creek. And they have that. And I believe that the project was also, members of the public will be able to access the promenade as well, all the way down. Up until dusk. At nighttime, the gate will be closed, so that will no longer be an access point. And that was agreed upon during the ministerial review process.
So it will be for bikes as well as pedestrians.
It'll be closed to the public, yes.
And, I'm sorry?
I'm sorry, the promenade, yes,
Pathway.
during the day.
And it will be, okay, that's what I wanted to know.
So if you live there, you can't access the path at night?
That I don't know. I don't know what the rules will be for the residents. It's all part of their property, and I'll defer to the applicant for that.
Other questions?
Yeah, I mean, I think, you know, we own a number of projects where we've created sort of, you know, on land that's on our parcel, public open space, and it really, you know, they sort of see how things go and if there are issues, but, you know, we're responsible for that space and for the safety of folks, and we have liability for that space. So it's, you know, generally envisioned, as Susie said, they'd be open dawn, you know, during the daylight hours. But there's lots of other backyard space for the residents. So you know, at night, they'll certainly be able to use, you know, the picnic tables or the seating area on the wooden deck or the turf in the back for kids in the tot lot.
Harry?
Can you explain to me what a bioswell, I mean, it's such a great word. What is a bioswell? And I noticed that if I remember correctly, there's like a retaining wall around there, and there's, I think it says 17 feet of retaining wall, potentially. I'm not sure.
There's a retaining wall along the creek, and depending on the elevation, I think the height of the retaining wall is between 4 and 6 feet. And I think that's because the grade is not the same along the creek. But a bioswell is, it's just an area that allows the water to percolate back into the groundwater. And there are, Susie probably knows this better than I, but there are requirements about keeping water on site so you're not sheeting water off of your parcel onto adjoining parcels. That's, you know, one of the issues in our built environment is that we've paved over everything. And so when we do get rain, a lot of it, you know, runs off to the ocean or wherever it goes instead of percolating back into the ground. And so that's the purpose of a bioswell. Sometimes projects have man-made, person-made reservoirs, but this is not that. This is I think bio just means it's sort of the natural method of allowing water to percolate back into the groundwater aquifers.
Okay, just one more question.
I was just going to chime in and say it's actually a city requirement. It's part of our low impact development requirement, and it's very limited what types of plants can be planted in that area. Although I understand there are some that do okay, and it's one of the biggest challenges, I think, or one of the bigger challenges that this project faced because it's already in a built environment, and the State Water Board kind of midstream in this review process changed what types of BMPs, best management practices, were appropriate,
right,
or allowed. And so, yeah.
So I guess my question then about the retaining wall is a retaining wall, you know, that's around the bioswell. Is that to level out the area, or is that to actually hold something of weight onto that property? I guess, does that wall breach and stuff oozes into the creek? I don't, you know, forgive the novice question, but.
I think I heard some of that. I believe the retaining wall is just necessary due to the grade of the site, relative to the grade of the pathway.
Right.
Otherwise, I don't think we would necessarily have a retaining wall. I think it's required.
Yeah, and I'm not the engineer either, but I'll just weigh in. And I'm sorry, I cannot read this plan, but the retaining wall that I recall is the wall that's really around the perimeter of the site that is for the grade differential between the path and the site, more than the actual bioswale.
Correct.
So it's not holding back any fluids or anything like that. It's about the land. the site.
Go right ahead.
If I could, so if you look at the border there, then it goes into a light gray and it goes into a dark gray. That light gray is really steep. And so the darker gray is the actual path. And if you think about that path going under Third Street, you can see how much lower it is. That retaining wall is because of that slope.
Exactly. That's-
Yeah,
Makes sense.
okay,
Other questions?
yeah.
Do you have another one?
Yeah, I do. I just want to, so the bottom left-hand part, that's the only creek access, the brown part right there, that's it, right? Where your cursor is?
That's the only, that's the only access from the creek to the promenade.
Okay, thank you.
Carol?
A follow-up to that. Let's say I live on the 5th floor. Is that the top floor? 5th floor, way on what I'm going to call is the right side. So I am about as far away from the creek access point as possible. And my kid and I want to go play on the creek trail. What's our path and how long does it take to get from our 5th floor apartment to the creek?
Well, I think you would walk the length of the building through the corridor, take your elevator down to the lobby, and come in through the gate.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions?
Well, I would just add though, that if you could, there are different ways. It's 6 floors, just so you know. And you could come down the elevator of your wing, you're in that back corner, and walk through the backyard I mean, there are different ways. You could walk out, there's also a stair on the 3rd Street side, the far right, and you could go, it wouldn't be the shortest, but you could go around the building on the road and down. I mean, there are,
Right.
yeah.
Susie, if you go back to I'm sorry, go ahead, Michelle.
I was gonna say, there's a stairwell that's right where it says, secondary entrance, along the loading dock. There's an exterior stairwell there, just to the left there, that's the note for it. And, so it would kind of depend on the experience you're looking for, covered or uncovered. Going to the creek, probably be uncovered and enjoy the backyard and the tot lot.
And Susie, if you go back to the left, back towards the promenade, there is, and I think this is a fire requirement, but there is an exit-only gate from the backyard. I'm not seeing it, but there is a gate inside of our fenced backyard that goes out to the path. It's a fire requirement, and to the extent during the hours of operation for the promenade, you could come out that gate and just make a short jaunt north and then go into the promenade.
Thank you. Questions by anyone?
Just really appreciate the presentation.
Very thorough presentation. Yeah, we'll have comments in a few minutes, but I agree with you, Art. If there are no other questions at the moment, and we will have time for comments, we're going to open up public input for this item. And we're now taking public comments. Anyone out there?
We do have somebody on Zoom. If you wish to make a comment, please raise your hand. You can do so by selecting the raise your hand icon. If you're calling in, please press *9. We do have one comment. Robert, can you please state your name for the record? I gave you a prompt to unmute yourself.
Hi there. Good morning. In the presentation, it was mentioned a fencing along the creek. What kind of fencing is that?
It's, I'm really good question. I think it's an open sort of wrought iron fence. I don't think it's actually wrought iron, but it's a black sort of open picket, some kind of wrought iron-like fence. Michelle, does that sound right to you?
Yeah, I was thinking it was one of those powder coated metal, but
Yeah.
I don't have that detail. We could find out. I don't recall.
But I know it's not a solid fence. I mean, I know there are a lot of reasons for that. So it's not a fence that folks should get through, but it's a fence that has visual access.
Excellent. Also was mentioned trees were going to be lining the creek. Are the existing trees, the oak trees that are along the creek right now, going to be salvaged and cleaned up?
We're
Sorry,
not really doing any.
Yeah, Don, wait one sec, please.
Sorry to interject here, but just a reminder, the way how public comment works is you can ask your questions. We'll go through, you get a full 3 minutes, and then afterwards, the applicant or staff can respond to your question. So Robert, go ahead and please comment and ask whatever questions you have. And then when your 3 minutes are up, the applicant team and staff can respond.
Okay.
So go ahead.
Apologies. It was just in regards to the trees that are already existing on the creek and what was happening with those.
Does that conclude your comment? Your set of questions?
Yes.
Great. And I'm happy to respond to that. This is Susie, the planner, and yes, those trees will be preserved. As I recall, and none of them will be removed, and there will definitely be some cleanup as part of the construction.
Thank you. Okay, committee, any final comments you'd like to make on this project? Please.
So I've been down there on my bicycle a couple of times and ridden all the way around. I'm so used to riding my bicycle along the creek path. And the last time we spoke, I said, what's the footprint? Now that I'm down there and it is so built, it's like, this is the footprint. So I know how far the setback is in real terms. I got a real new appreciation when I rode my bicycle along 3rd Street and looked down on the project and saw the oak trees and eucalyptus trees and the depth. It's a fascinating project because it has so many different perspectives from the creek, from the street, and then from the residents who are going to be such an asset to cleaning up and enlivening our Santa Rosa Creek Trail. It's very, very exciting for me. I look forward to participating in it moving forward.
Thank you.
I hope I'll get admonished for asking or saying this, but I hope the graffiti isn't part of the historical preservation that's on the brick walls.
It is not, but we're not painting until we're finished. No, we're gonna sandblast it or whatever we can do to historic brick to clean it without destroying the brick. But it will not remain, and I'm sure there are various ways to sort of fight graffiti, as I'm sure you know, and you can either, have a sacrificial coat that you put on, and then when it's graffitied, you take that off and reapply it, or there are other protective coatings. But there will be no graffiti. We're not considering that part of the historic fabric wall.
So I'd just like to say thank you for your hard work, your diligence, your patience to the utmost in this development. Michelle, you've been there for so long in this project, and this is really a tribute to development along the creek. This is a model development in terms of both the way it orients to the creek and the access. I think it's a very important project, and it's going to do a lot for the creek as well as for the Railroad Square area. And I just want to say that I had met John Stewart, and I found him incredibly impressive, and I think this is a wonderful tribute to a wonderful man. So thank you so much. Really fine job.
Thank you to all of our city partners. Santa Rosa, we work all over, and Santa Rosa truly has been a pleasure to work with, from Susie and her colleagues to the folks in the Housing Authority and to all of the other city commissions and members we've met. So thank you very much for being good city partners on this.
Thank you to our planners for a very, very thorough job with the new state law. Well, thank you all. Unless there are any other questions or comments, I don't mean to cut in.
I would think that the street name is writes itself at this point, right? Stewart Lane. Maybe that's for you.
Yeah, can we vote on that? Good point. Good point. Okay.
Thank you very much. And thank you for all your good work.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Okay, and thank you to the patience of our next team here. We're going to, we're going to move on to the next scheduled item, which is the proposal for the Heritage Commerce Project. And you're jammed in here.
Representing
I need to say to introduce this.
We'll probably just take a couple minutes to get set up between planners here.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll stretch my legs there.
Good idea.
Yeah, feel free to take a little break if you'd like. The restrooms are just down the hall to the right here.
Is that gate open, you think?
It is.
The street name, that was really good. I mean, like, it's the second time I've seen the presentation. You know, you're just sort of like, oh, city name, and you're just like.
Seems pretty obvious to me. And I like the sound of it better than Sanders Lane. That was my go-to.
We're gonna have to wait a little while on that.
Shoot for the stars and they end up landing on the moon, you know, you just gotta go for it.
There's no reason.
Oh, we'll let Stuart have it this time, sure.
I don't think we ever.
Yes, sir.
Entering the railroad, but that,
Full screen. Do I have to present from Adobe or can I go to PowerPoint? Oh, share screen.
All right.
Oh, yeah.
Use these.
Okay.
What an address.
Agenda item.
And Chair, do you want to reintroduce since we're back from?
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, no problem.
That's a formal break. I'd like to introduce item 5.2, Heritage Commerce Proposal, and introduce Jan and the staff planner.
Thank you.
Presentation.
Thank you. Good morning, members of the Waterways Advisory Committee. Thank y'all for coming today. I'm Janet Briscoe, and I'm here to present about Heritage Commerce Center located at 0 North Point Parkway. The applicant is proposing to develop an approximately 74,949 square feet industrial building called Heritage Commerce Center. Here you can see the rendering of what the building will look like. And you can also see some of the landscaping plans that they're planning on doing. And this is the neighborhood context. And you can see this building will be on 2 parcels, and the parcel to the back is abutting Roseland Creek. And I don't know if anyone is going to bring up concerns about setbacks, but this particular parcel, it qualifies for an exception under zoning code section 20-30.040D3, where a fully channelized waterway exists, structures may be closer to the top of the bank. And here's the site plan. Right here, you can see there's parking lots on either side of the building. And I wasn't able to upload the landscaping plan, but the applicant is proposing to put Chinese pistache trees, coastal live oaks, strawberry trees, western redbuds, and the dwarf magnolias around the site. And the general plan land use designation is general industry, and the zoning is general industrial. Thus, they're both consistent. And the project only requires a design review right now because it's over 10,000 square feet. However, we don't know if it's going to need a conditional use permit because we don't know the uses that are going to be in there yet. And so the Planning and Economic Development Department requests that the Waterways Advisory Committee provide comments and direction for the Commerce Center located at 0 North Point Parkway. And the applicant team is here if y'all have any questions for them as well.
Okay, thank you. Would you like to make a presentation, or should we just, no questions?
I'll go real quickly, throw up the plan. Actually, go to the next one, be better. I'm gonna steal some thunder, but so I'm in escrow on the one with the star, and then also the one to the right side. In the middle is Viavi, if everybody's familiar with that company. So we're buying these I call them 2 parcels, there are a total of 6 parcels, but they're two projects. This is Heritage, 74,000 square feet. And then coming up probably in June, we think, or July will be what we call North Point Commerce Center. Very creative with our names. We're buying this to fulfill a need for industrial development or industrial projects in Santa Rosa, greater Santa Rosa, Sonoma County area. Vacancy currently is around 1% for industrial projects, warehouse distribution, light manufacturing, that type of thing. This was the business park. That's what it was designed to do when it was first done. Originally, JDS Uniphase was the campus there. Ockley was there. A lot of different other uses. We have my civil engineer here. He can talk through the technical points if we get into it. But the idea is that we'll construct it. If you go back to the site plan, it'd be great. So we're coming off the existing court that's there. It's all existing stormwater systems. We're retaining and going through bioswales to treat the water before it runs into the existing stormwater system, and then it'll exit via that either into the creek system or into the stormwater detention system after that. So we're retaining all the water on site. The building is utilitarian in design because we don't know who the tenant's going to be. So you have to make it kind of as open as possible. We've gone through the first planning commission. Conceptual design review. We went through that and we had some good feedback. We beefed up the landscape and did some other things after that. And so we're working through design review process right now. So with that, available for any questions or comments. And my name's Jose McNeil, not item number 2.
Item. I'm gonna change my Christmas card.
Questions by the committee?
Yeah, hey, Jaden, just so you know, we love to talk about setbacks here, just so you know. It's our favorite thing. Yeah. So the question is, you quoted the reference, but what is without an exemption, what is the setback? And then what is the setback that you guys are exempting?
The original setbacks without the exemption would be 30 feet, I believe, from the creek. And right now, I'm not sure what the setback is for this particular.
Yeah.
But it looks like it's in line with the other development.
Exactly. That's what we matched up with the existing development that's there. And I think from the top of the creek we were set back. I think we meet that setback even though we could come.
Because of the bioswale?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Thank you.
Sure.
Having visited the site, first I want to say thank you for cutting down the grass between the creek and the back. I was going to ask the same question about whether or not it was the same setback to the creek as the other buildings.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, it's because we have that drive aisle around. Just you have to be able to go around for the fire department, so you have to have. I think it's 32 feet is that driveway, and then we have the berm against the building, and then on the other side as well. So we're set back. In line with the other buildings, yeah.
Second is just a point of clarification. The current project and the one you have planned for June, does that complete the build out of this particular runway from the old?
Yeah, there's one across, there's one other piece across North Point Parkway. If you go to on the corner, you can see the brown area there.
Yeah.
That's still available, but it doesn't have any runway. And then the only other piece that could be developed is, if you look on the upper right side there, there's a parking lot there. And that was impacted. It was developed for the JES Uniface campus as additional parking, those type of things. There's some other easements addressed with that, and it sort of abuts the residential there as well. But these would be probably the last 2 big buildings, and big being 114 and 74. They're not big buildings.
Thank you. My last question had to do with the landscape. Much appreciation for the oaks. I'm not familiar with the pistache. Is that also?
Yeah, it's in the WELO. Whatever we do is in the WELO program for the water
Efficient
landscape ordinance. So.
Do you know if it's a California native?
It's Mediterranean and it's used regularly in landscapes around the city.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Street trees too.
Yeah.
So I was not looking at the presentation per se, but one of the attachments, the planning watershed area, which identifies Santa Rosa Creek, Roseland Creek there, not Santa Rosa Creek, as being slated for restoration, which would mean it wouldn't be channelized.
Maybe ask Steve to weigh in on that.
Yeah, so it is shown as a potential, a restoration reach within the Creek Master Plan. We don't have any plans on there yet, but that could be in the future. And there is an existing paved pathway on the south side of the creek that will travel kind of west of this area, and then there's the plan for a future bridge over the creek, but it's away from the parcel that we're looking at here. And just a little bit for context too, you have the creek area and then the top of bank, and then there's a little bit of room, and then there's a gravel access road on the north side of the creek, and then several feet, and then the fence line. So really, like, as far as creek setbacks go, the top of the creek is quite a distance away. So just to kind of put that in perspective.
Thank you, Kevin.
I believe there's a plan for a sound wall on the back side.
On the North Point one.
Okay.
Yeah, because were you at the
concept
design? The concept design?
No.
Yeah, because that was one of the things that got brought up, and so we're putting a sound wall over here. The way this building's configured, because the docks or the truck door is going to be on the side, not the back side.
Okay.
So it really doesn't have a need for that. But the North Point one, when we bring it in, you'll see we have a sound wall there.
And so where is it? So on here, on the North Point, when you're talking about the other
Yeah, the other one, yeah.
Oh, okay,
Yeah.
so this one doesn't have a sound wall?
No, if we
Okay.
go to the site plan, Jan, you can see we have the building kind of wrapped around where any deliveries would be made.
Gotcha, okay.
That type of thing. So
Good,
that'll be
good.
continued.
Well, that sounds good, I think.
Well, hopefully it doesn't sound at all.
Well, I live across the creek.
I know that's.
And so and right now, well, we look across at one of the existing buildings and there's no sound wall. And there's very little noise, thankfully. We didn't know when we moved in, of course, but what I like about that is it opens up. It opens up your vista a little bit. Even though we're looking at a wall, we're also looking at trees. And if there's future restoration of the creek, I think, to the extent that we don't have walls.
Well, what the sound wall will be, it'll also have some green screen on the backside as well. So we'll do some.
And that project will come forward to the board for comments on that one, but.
How high will that
Or
work?
the building coming out.
Can we talk about that?
That's right. I'm sorry. Yeah, there you go. There you go. Forgive me for digressing. But all right, thanks.
No higher than 75 feet.
Well, as long as it's not 150, then it's fine,
So
yeah.
could you describe the interface between your project and the creek? Is there fencing?
Yeah, there'll be fencing along the backside there, just for separation. And then as the person in the water said, there's kind of a I'll call it a landscape area off our parcel, then a gravel road, and then a bank, and then the creek. So
And what kind of fencing are you
we're
anticipating?
probably going to do chain link with slats, vinyl slats for privacy,
Privacy from
just so that people can't see in and out. And
the creek?
Yeah.
Oh, I was down, I didn't see it.
Well, it's more of a security thing is when you have it, we do have people who wander along the creeks for nefarious reasons, so we like to.
Really?
There fencing or other structures on either side?
Yes.
And they're the same chain
Yeah, that'd be
link?
the same idea we're going to do.
Okay, we're trying to encourage sight lines
Right, yeah.
between developments and the creek for the safety of folks. Because, people are down there, there's isolation, that's when you get the problem. So
Right.
I do have a question about that. Anybody have any other questions?
As a follow-up to that, knowing what the pre-existing buildings have for fencing, because that is a long,
Right.
common, would let us know, number one, what kind of problems are already being experienced. Number two, what kind of fencing is already in place. And at a future date, I would love to talk about the other side of the creek, which has a barbed wire fence between, has nothing to do with your project.
Okay.
But the barbed wire between the park and the creek was a little disconcerting for me, but that's a future discussion.
Absolutely, by the way, we'll respond back when we get
Thank you
there.
so much.
Other questions of the committee at the moment? We'll get to comments in a minute. Are there any members of the public who would like to speak?
Yes, if you wish to make a comment via Zoom, you can do so by raising your hand. If you're calling in, please press *9. All right, Chair Rabinovich, there are no hands raised.
I did think of a question.
Questions, comment?
Question.
We can go into comments as well.
Okay, well, question is, if I read the reports right, there was some potential for tiger salamander use of this site, not on the existing.
No, we're in CTS, yeah, so we're mitigating for that.
You are,
Yeah.
okay, all right. How does that work?
Well, I'll do the straight answer first. You mitigate, we contract with the mitigation bank, set aside, I don't know whether it's 2-to-1 or 3-to-1 for the habitat that we then fund. And that's how that's taken care of.
Okay.
So,
Great,
yeah.
okay.
So,
Sounds
yeah,
good.
it's part of the all environmental review, CTS, and then there was 0.01 acres of wetlands on the other project that we've also mitigated for as well.
Okay, all right, thanks.
And follow up on that, if you read the Creek Master Plan, the tiger salamanders are farther south than it's closer to Yuba Avenue, where most of them congregate.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah.
Arthur, are you able, I just kind of want to know what the mitigation fees were from the bank? I mean, I know they're really high.
Yeah, they're really high. I think I blocked them out of my mind.
Okay, that's okay, understood.
Comments by the committee? Anyone have anything they'd like to say? Yes.
Regarding the fencing, it is an additional cost to put in privacy slats, and comment would be, well, maybe you don't need them, but if you do need them, you can always add them later.
Sure.
So that's just a
Yeah,
comment.
no, that's fine. I know it's protocol or the way it goes. What we're trying to do is protect not only the tenant, but also,
Sure.
things. And that's just always that trade-off you have.
Yeah, it's our interest as well. We want, we're looking for a balance there.
And the other fences have the same slats.
Yeah, well, they also have, I think they actually have, to your thing, Viavi's a very high security place, and they might even have some wire up top as well. So, and one of the reasons that there's not a lot of activity is they have 24/7 security that if you pull in and park and are there for a little bit, they'll come over and talk to you.
That sounds like experience.
Yes.
In reviewing past projects, and it has nothing to do with you or even your neighbors, sometimes the fences that certain people build are not permitted, are not to code, and they do not get reviewed by the city unless there are complaints made. Is that correct, Susie? So it could be the Wild West as well.
I should add that our contractor on this is DevCon Construction out of Petaluma. They're a union contractor, just so everybody knows what we're doing. And I've built about 6 projects with DevCon in the North Bay. So from Petaluma to Sonoma County.
So they're in good hands.
They're very good. In fact, they were a co-general contractor on the 49ers Stadium. So
Thank you. Any other comments by committee members? Okay, I think that's it. Amy, is there anything you'd like to clarify about comments or anything?
No, I think they're pretty straightforward. You have everything you need? Yeah?
Okay, thank you, Susie. And
Yeah, thank you.
thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Before we adjourn, so I just want to iterate again, and I know you're aware, but this is to staff, the level of detail that we're receiving in the staff reports and the new members won't see this, has really shrunk. We used to get the pieces out of the manual, so the setbacks, it was all, and the planners discussed that, and it was very obvious, and it was a clear point, all the things that applied from the manual to this project. And I understand that there's a timeline in here where maybe we're in front conceptually before the planner has to look at it. But I just want to iterate that it makes it really difficult for us to properly evaluate and provide advisory comments. And so I'd sure like to see us be able to go back to the way it was before.
As a follow-up to that, projects like this where it's surrounded by pre-existing buildings, which either rightly or not, I assume were done to code, kind of help me. It's the isolated project. I'm thinking specifically of the new medical building on Brookwood, where the landscape plans were so in-depth. This was a Zoom presentation. I think that was Macy Carlisle. They just gave us so much information to work with and to get comfortable with. For me, those are the kind of projects where the more information is better, as opposed to a fill-in piece like this, where you would tell us if there were other buildings already in violation of code, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
If we know it. If we know it.
Yeah.
So we operate under the same kind of assumptions as you do, that if it's an industrial building that's built, it was built with permits and to code. So, and it's also real important to note too, that this is very early on in the
Yeah.
process.
Yes.
We have not, staff has not done an analysis of this project.
Yeah.
And that's why I'm suggesting maybe our timing isn't in the right place right now. Maybe we should come after you guys have had a chance to actually thoroughly look at it. So that's what
Yeah, I think Art's referring to a conversation that we had offline, but there was an effort over the last few years to really streamline for the applicants, but also for staff. And I agree that it's difficult because when you're seeing projects, they're almost at a conceptual stage. So it's before it's moving on to their entitlement hearings. And it is usually at the beginning of project phase. So there hasn't been that level of analysis and you're helping inform that analysis. So it is a little bit difficult, but if we move the review for your committee later, that may actually interrupt the formation of the project itself.
Yeah.
So it is a balance. So it's something that we've been talking about internally to make sure that we've got the development track aligned with what's necessary for our processing and the streamlining, but also making sure you all have enough information to provide value to the process. So it's an ongoing conversation. So we're going to keep thinking about how to best address what you need and try to do better. But with the larger projects, we definitely try to bring more information, and especially if there's a landscape architect involved, having them at the meeting.
And that one was further along in the process.
Let me just add that we've actually looked at projects where we felt that the projects weren't fully developed enough, and we've said we don't have enough information. We've asked them to come back, which throws a monkey wrench into the system too, which we don't want to do. And so that's another part of the balance.
Right. I think that came up with the Stony Point Flats housing project.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's something that we're trying to figure out how to balance.
Appreciate continuing to look at that.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Hey, I was gonna, just to reiterate that, I think if we go back to the staff reports in some prior projects, the level of detail there really is helpful, where the law is cited in terms of setback. And usually it gives us really exact numbers, like it would be 30 feet, but in this case, there's an exception. It's 50, and this one is 48.5, and because we're so creek centric, that is really helpful. Anything that impacts the creek, the more detail you can give us, the better. The more helpful it is. So, thanks.
Great. Good points. Thank you. Other comments by anyone? Okay, with that, we will adjourn to meeting, and the next anticipated meeting is
June 22nd.
Field trip?
Field trip.
Hey.
June 20-something. Well, we're going to try our best to do field trip. Yeah.
That would be fun.
We need to work on this.
And very exciting. Congratulations on all that progress on the.
So
that is great.
June what?
22nd.
22nd.
Yeah.
If we end up having development project meeting you all, then we might try to find a special date for the field trip, and we'll schedule that through.
Okay.
So that's the only unknown at this time.
Great.
All right, thanks.
Thank you.